Welcome to Sociology Visualized. How can social scientists study a world of meanings, values, and power relations without being influenced by them? Can a researcher ever be truly neutral while examining deeply embedded social realities such as caste, gender, religion, or inequality? This fundamental question lies at the heart of social science methodology. It brings into focus two crucial and often contested concepts: objectivity and reflexivity. While objectivity represents the aspiration toward unbiased and value-free knowledge, reflexivity emphasizes the researcher's embeddedness within the very social world they seek to study. Objectivity in social science, meaning and foundations. Objectivity refers to the ideal that scientific inquiry should be free from personal biases, subjective interpretations, and normative judgments. It assumes that reality exists independently of the observer and can be studied through systematic, empirical methods. This idea is deeply rooted in the tradition of positivism, which advocates the application of methods from the natural sciences to the study of society. Auguste Comte argued that sociology should aim to discover universal laws governing social phenomena through observation and classification. Émile Durkheim further strengthened this position by introducing the concept of social facts, which he defined as external, coercive forces that shape individual behavior. In his study Suicide, he demonstrated how even an intensely personal act could be explained through social variables such as integration and regulation. Max Weber offered a more nuanced view by introducing the idea of value neutrality. He acknowledged that values inevitably influence the selection of research topics, but insisted that the process of analysis must remain as objective as possible. Objectivity thus involves empirical observation, methodological rigor, replicability, and the separation of facts from values. Limits and critiques of objectivity. Despite its centrality, objectivity has been widely critiqued. Critics argue that social reality is fundamentally different from natural reality because it is constituted by meanings, interpretations, and lived experiences. Unlike natural scientists, social researchers are themselves part of the social world they study. Their identities, backgrounds, and beliefs inevitably shape their perspectives. Therefore, the idea of complete detachment is increasingly seen as untenable. Furthermore, what is considered objective knowledge often reflects dominant social positions, raising questions about whose perspective is being presented as neutral. These critiques paved the way for the emergence of reflexivity as a critical methodological principle. Reflexivity, concept and intellectual origins. Reflexivity refers to the practice of critically examining how the researcher's own social position, assumptions, and interactions influence the research process and its outcomes. It emerges from interpretivist, phenomenological, and post-structural traditions, which emphasize that social reality is constructed through meanings and cannot be understood independently of the observer. Pierre Bourdieu developed the idea of reflexive sociology, urging researchers to analyze their own habitus and position within the academic and social field. For Bourdieu, reflexivity is essential to uncover hidden biases and power structures in knowledge production. Anthony Giddens introduced the concept of double hermeneutics, highlighting that social science involves interpreting a world that is already interpreted by its participants. Donna Haraway challenged the notion of universal objectivity through her concept of situated knowledge, arguing that all knowledge is produced from specific social locations and perspectives. Feminist interventions and the politics of knowledge. Feminist scholars have played a crucial role in advancing reflexivity. They argue that traditional claims of objectivity often mask male-dominated, Eurocentric perspectives as universal truths. Reflexivity, in this context, becomes a tool to expose power relations embedded in knowledge production. It demands that researchers explicitly acknowledge their positionality and remain accountable for how their perspectives shape their work. Objectivity and reflexivity, tension and complementarity. Objectivity and reflexivity are often presented as opposing approaches. Objectivity emphasizes neutrality, detachment, and the possibility of unbiased knowledge. Reflexivity, on the other hand, stresses subjectivity, involvement, and the inevitability of perspective. However, contemporary social science increasingly views them as complementary. Reflexivity does not necessarily reject objectivity. Rather, it seeks to refine and deepen it by making the research process more transparent and self-aware. Reflexivity in research practice. In practical terms, reflexivity operates at several levels. At the personal level, it involves reflecting on how one's identity, such as caste, class, gender, or ethnicity, affects the research process. At the epistemological level, it requires questioning the assumptions underlying one's theoretical framework. At the methodological level, it entails examining how research methods shape findings. For example, a researcher studying caste relations in India must consider how their own caste background influences access to participants, interpretation of data, and interactions in the field. Reflexivity requires not only acknowledging these influences but also critically analyzing their implications. Post-structural and postmodern critiques. Post-structural thinkers have further challenged the idea of objective knowledge. Michel Foucault argued that knowledge is inseparable from power and is always produced within discursive formations that serve specific interests. Jacques Derrida emphasized the instability of meaning through deconstruction, suggesting that texts and interpretations are always open to multiple readings. These perspectives undermine the possibility of a single, universal truth and reinforce the importance of reflexivity in understanding how knowledge is constructed. Toward reflexive objectivity. In contemporary social science, there is a growing emphasis on what can be termed reflexive objectivity. This approach acknowledges that complete neutrality is unattainable, but still strives for rigor, consistency, and critical distance. Reflexivity becomes a methodological strength rather than a limitation. By making biases visible and subjecting them to scrutiny, researchers can produce more credible and ethically grounded knowledge. Strategies such as triangulation, transparency in methods, and positionality statements are increasingly used to achieve this balance. Conclusion: rethinking the nature of knowledge. The debate between objectivity and reflexivity reflects a broader transformation in the philosophy of social science. Objectivity, once seen as the cornerstone of scientific inquiry, is now understood as an ideal that must be critically examined. Reflexivity does not signal the end of objectivity, rather, it represents its evolution. It shifts the focus from a detached view from nowhere to a more grounded and self-aware view from somewhere. In this sense, the task of the social scientist is not merely to observe society, but to critically engage with their own role in the production of knowledge. If you found this lecture helpful, do like, subscribe and share this video. Thank you.